Welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine. He's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Well, it's the 75th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. What say you?
It's it's amazing, and it's interesting that it's come up now. It's like the country turned on a dime that day. I've been writing about copyright stuff, and the copyrights in music date back to two consent decrees that were passed in 1941. Now, we think of 1941 as a war year, but it was all the way till December 7th before we were actually in a war, right? Most of the year was arguing against the war. People did not want to go to the war. So, and then all of a sudden, in one day, there we all were, And I think that's kind of analogous to what's happening now. November 8th this year was the day, but there's a new America. It's a hard stop, right?
Yeah, no, and it was obviously a tragic day for us. 2,403 lives were lost. I think there's still bodies that are entombed in the Arizona that are there that'll probably never be recovered. But one of the things I thought was amazing, and just kind of looking at some of the stories, is just that there are actually still survivors of that attack. Now they're all in their 90s, and they're kind of wobbly in some respects. But boy, that's still quite a monument. That means they were somewhere between 17, 18, maybe 20 years old. I mean, we've got that's pretty amazing that you can have the living history now for us, since it was a little bit before our time,
right?
Just a little bit,
yeah.
And so. Be that as it may, actually we look very well preserved.
But wasn't all of them.
Yeah. But it was a very interesting time, and having a mother that was from Japan, that was actually in a city that was bombed, later on, which was really a direct result. I mean, this attack really kind of pushed everything up, and the U.S. finally, decided, we got to take care of this. There's a lot of history there, and it just foretold what was happening down the line, and really helped kind of the beginning of the end of the war in the end.
Right. That's right.
So anyway, but that's we just wanted to mention that. And
I always think about there was the Redskins were playing when this happened, right? Because we're several hours ahead of them, whatever. And there's you hear all these stories about they started announcing over the loudspeaker at the stadium. Colonel Smith, call your office. General Jones, call your office. It's like if you're sitting at that game, you're like, wow, what's going on? This is before the internet, obviously. What are all the military guys leaving for? What should I be doing? But so I mean, it really did change things, like a big hard stop.
Right, and to get what you just said, I mean, to get the news out there, because they're in a completely different time zone. They are really isolated. This thing happens, with the kind of communications we had back then, getting the word out, nothing like it does today. I mean, within seconds, everybody knows what's happened somewhere.
Right. They said that yesterday. Trump said the thing about the Boeing was going over cost for building the new Air Force One 10 seconds before the market reacted.
Yeah, it's sudden, it's swift, and everything. All right, so some things that are trending. We got this weekend. We have to do our obligatory sports reporting as usual. So college football playoffs are set. What's your thought?
My thought is should be Penn State in and Ohio State out. The reason for that is the whole point of these playoffs, right? And I was against the BCS. I'm against even more the thing now, because the old system was everybody went to a bowl game, and there could be 6 bowl games that played into the national title, right? Depending on the situation, you could have all kinds of teams with a chance that day. I remember one year when Joe Montana was at Notre Dame, they were playing Houston in the Cotton Bowl. Notre Dame had 3 losses that year, but they were behind 35-7 and came back and won the game. And all the Notre Dame haters are about to shoot us here, but they gave them the national championship.
Yeah, but you're Catholic.
But they earned it on that day, right? And there were multiple games where it could have been earned, and the other people didn't step up. So now you have a deal. So we said, okay, we don't want a beauty contest. We don't want people just eyeballing this stuff and figuring it out, right? So we're going to have playoffs. Okay, so when we get to playoffs, how did Ohio State get chosen over Penn State? a beauty contest. Ohio State lost to Penn State, did not play in the conference championship game. Penn State not only played in it but won it. How can Ohio State go, well, they just seem like a better team? Well, that's not, the seem like a better team is what we were trying to get out. So the Post naturally comes out and they say, well, the problem is, it really needs to be 8 teams. So that way we'll be sure. And when you get to 8 teams, you're going to have the argument at 8 and 9, right? You're just moving down the argument. And it's like the college basketball. They let 68 teams now. And there's a big article the day after the tournament every year. Here's 12 teams that should have been part of the 68. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So what's the solution to any of that?
Get rid of playoffs. Go back to all the bowls potentially could count.
Okay. And I understand all of these things too. BYU won the national title. What was it, 1984 or something like that?
Totally deserved it.
Yeah.
They won 14 games.
Yeah, they were undefeated, but a lot of people griped about that because they didn't have the strongest schedule in the world that year, right?
And they beat a 6-5 Michigan team to win it.
Right.
But see, that's a good example though. They were the best team. They were the team who took all the bullets, and it was a lot because they played a game in Japan or somewhere that year, and so they, you got a free. That was back before you could play 12 games plus a conference championship and all that. 14 games was hard to get to at that time, and so they dodged all those bullets. They had 12 people saying, "Hey, all I got to do is beat that team," and yeah, they did end up with a 6-5 Michigan team or something, but they're the ones who got through that. I've always supported the. BYU. Somebody I put this on Facebook, and somebody answered and said, well, it comes down to who spends the most money in those towns and who drinks the most. Well, that's why BYU.
Yeah. Yeah, you can count on their beer dollars in that town. Yeah, right. Good old for San Diego out there. And the thing too, just the even if you complain about some of the strength of schedule, the thing is that there are teams that will beat you. How many times have we seen these teams? They schedule those soft teams for reasons. They want to build up their record, big payoff for the small colleges, and the next thing you know, they get an upset. Yeah, and it can potentially ruin their national title hopes.
That's right.
So you have to watch out for those things. Yeah, it's kind of a tough situation. Yeah, we can go. We'll go to basketball some other time when we get back into the tournament time again next year. But yeah, I just see this thing for TV revenue. It's like, why don't we just have 100 teams in here? What's stopping them?
Right.
It's all money now.
That's right.
Right? All right. Well, this morning, Time Person of the Year was revealed, and it is Donald Trump, and who I think is well deserving of that. The interesting thing I think about this is just that on the cover, if you actually look at the cover that was issued, it says President of the Divided States of America. So
they cannot miss an opportunity.
No, they can't. They can't. They could have just gone and said President-elect Donald Trump, which they have done with other previous presidents. I went back and I looked online at going back to 1980 and looking at the times that they selected the president or president-elect as the person of the year, and they had for George H.W. Bush, they had kind of a dual image of Bush looking in two directions, and they said the two George Bushes, and I don't remember what that was all about exactly. But then in 2004 for George W. Bush, they said American Revolutionary. But that you can see that as positive. But this was decidedly negative. They didn't say anything like this about Obama. They never said anything like about Clinton. So yeah, this is another stab.
Right.
And Trump
and who is responsible for it being disunited?
Right.
He's not president. Right. He
right.
hasn't even taken the oath of office.
Right. They did this reveal on the Today Show this morning, and then Matt Lauer got Trump on the phone to talk to him about this, and Trump clearly, he came out and he says, about this divided states of America. So I was like, I'm not the president of the divided states of America, basically what you're saying. That wasn't me.
Yeah.
I didn't create that. I'm here to fix it.
Right.
So it's just take that stab. If they think they're going to get away with this, I'm looking at my social media, my Facebook replies and things like that to stuff that we've seen this morning, and they're like, "Yeah, did you see that snarky cover?" So I think that that may actually be the extra story there. That maybe they blew it by doing that because it's going to create another conversation going on, maybe a little bit of a takeaway for that.
An interesting thing that's happening on this too is before the election, kids, you take people 20 and below, people who could not vote in the election, were probably 80% for Hillary, right? And now that the vote has happened and he is president, there are a large number. I've talked to a bunch of kids in the last few weeks, all the way from, my players who were in the third or fourth, fifth, sixth grade, and up to people 19 or 20 years old, who have said the tune has totally changed. Let's give it a chance, which I think is really interesting. I think obviously their parents are saying that, right? They're getting that from somewhere. But I think the idea, I think a lot of the people in the country are like, yeah, it looks bad, but it could work too.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, so and I'm not going to say I'm a big fan of the whole Person of the Year deal anyway, because they've had some pretty sketchy picks over the years, but and then Hillary was second and Hackers was third, so it's kind of like Hillary lost again. But
but here's the thing about it, though: the rule, the rule that they supposedly use to pick this is that you made the most news of the year. I would argue that even if Hillary had won, Trump made the most news.
Right, and then Trump last year tweeted about the fact that he thought he deserved it last year, and they gave it to Angela Merkel. So it's that's kind of funny. And then the Today Show, when they did this thing, they said that Hillary was the Today Show viewers' pick. Which yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've never really paid much attention to it till this time, because this was, with Trump and everything, it makes everything very interesting.
Yeah.
I think very newsworthy on that. So let's move on and talk about some of the Trump cabinet picks. Mad Dog Mattis has made it more official, I guess, last night in North Carolina. Yeah, anybody with the name Mad Dog, I'd love that.
Yeah, I think so. I tell you what, from what I'm reading, the people in the military could not be more excited.
They love this guy.
Yeah, they love this guy. There's a little concern about being a blunt force instrument, right? But there is a lot of enthusiasm for it's a guy who gets it, who wants us to do what we were trained to do, and who understands the power and the limit. Because like he has those quotes out there, like, "Please don't make me have to kill you." Right? So I mean, he understands like what happens in a war, and that the tragedy is real, and that people stay dead, right? And so I think he's a good pick, and I guess they have to pass some legislation to accept him from a law that says you have to be out of the military
for 7 years.
Amount of time.
Yeah. That's what they did for George Marshall, but yeah,
right.
He has to be retired, and he's only been retired for 3.
Right, and they're trying to do it in this Congress.
They're trying to do it in a spending bill, I think it was. So, which there have been rumors, I guess, or reports that would blow up the spending bill. But what's the purpose of this? The other part of this whole thing, as we talk about the cabinet too, is that the Democrats have said, well, they want to give it kind of the Merrick Garland treatment. It's like, and what purpose does this serve?
Right. How does that get you back into office?
Yeah.
Because it was the argument the Republicans made. You may not agree with it, but it didn't make sense. Like, this is going to be a whole direction for the country, and we've already indicated that's not the direction we want to go, right? But you're going to hold up his whole cabinet for 4 years? I mean, they're just going to have to serve without being confirmed, right? I mean, you're just cutting off your nose to spite your face. It's not like they could come up with a defense secretary the Democrats would approve of.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, so this is kind of just nonsense from the part of the Democrats. Transportation secretary. I think you were very pleased with that.
Elaine Chao. Yes, nice lady. When my first day at Heritage, I had to write 2 profiles. One was her leaving, and the other one was Jenny Thomas had just been named to the liaison to the executive branch.
Oh, okay.
Right. So the same day, and it was really interesting because she couldn't have been more laid back and happy, and she'd gotten this exciting job to be Secretary of Labor in the Bush administration, and she had a ship wheel. She showed me that her father went to school with Deng Xiaoping in China. He's a shipping magnate. Her father is, and he had given him the wheel. So it was a wheel from and she was just going through her little thing she had, and it was fun. And then I went to talk to Jenny Thomas. And she was it was all very raw, the Anita Hill stuff. And like every question was, treated as, she was very, guarded about her responses and so forth. And, I finally told her, I'm like, ma'am, the procedure on this is we bring this up to you and you approve every word of it. If there's a word you don't like, I change the word. okay. Oh, okay. So then we had a good conversation. She's a good lady, done a lot for the movement, but she was very nervous about, reporter. And she asked me, right? I'm like, yeah, my newspaper, I have background newspapers. Oh, that wasn't good.
But I'm
anyway,
not that
but
kind
I think
of newspaper guy.
But the other thing about Chao is all these picks have been a little edgy. Mattis, we're going to talk about Ben Carson,
Right.
Sessions, so forth. But that one's a pretty down the line standard Republican pick. I think so. I'm wondering, like, why would you do that, and why would you do that there when he plans to do a lot of stuff to do with transportation, right? He really wants to rebuild airports. He hates the airports, and he has this big infrastructure plan. But I think it's, she's married to Mitch McConnell, and I think that has a lot to do with it. He sort of goes around and, like, the same thing about talking to Gore. He has a way of, like, blunting his enemies.
Yeah, no, I mean, this whole thing that Trump has been doing. I mean, he's keeping everybody really off balance because he's bringing in everybody. I mean, it's basically like throwing the kitchen sink out there, and the media doesn't know what the heck is going on.
You're downstairs at this office building, and all you see is them get on an elevator.
Yeah, you
and
just
then
see
there's
this
a bank of microphones.
Yeah,
And the other thing is, like, the question I never saw asked about this, the accuracy of media question of the day on this, right? There was a story last week. It cost $1 million a day to protect Trump, right, while he's in New York doing this. Okay, he's in an office building, right? He's upstairs. There's not really a lot of protecting. I mean, you guard the bottom, you guard the building, you guard the airspace, right? But I mean, Obama was running this out of 2 or 3 places in Chicago. How could this be? And and there's all this. Oh, they're going to shoot him because he's the first black president. We can't have that, right? How could Obama's have been any cheaper than Trump's?
right.
I mean, no one ever. All those stories cost $1 million a day. Okay, what did it cost Obama? Where's that fact so we can compare? If it costs $7 for Obama and $1 million for Trump, okay, Trump, cool out, right? But you don't know because they don't ever tell you that.
I think part of that is because it's all that fight for 15.
Yeah, that's.
No, but the other thing about this security, I mean, so de Blasio is asking the White House for what, $35 million or something like that to help cover some of these costs. But I also saw an article, a report that the brokers for the building are peddling this increased security as part of the perks of being in the building. And I'm like, well, okay, why not? Just take advantage of it. You want a really secure building? Hey, you got to move over here. It's only going to cost you a little extra, Right. We'll throw in a little bit of security.
Anyway.
Yeah. Wow, you got Secret Service protection. You guys must be really important. So, then the other pick too is Ben Carson. We thought he was in as HHS. He said he wasn't interested. They bring him back in and name him for HUD. That's an interesting selection. I mean, I think we've discussed this a little bit before in terms of his qualifications for that. I think deep down my hope is that he goes in there to shake it up and trim that back, if not push that to the brink of elimination.
I think that he understands. I think this ended up being a real good pick for him because HUD, the thing kind of runs itself, and it's a bully pulpit. And he is the exact person to put in that bully pulpit to say, hey, inner cities, we're not forgetting you anymore. We're not glossing over and throw a little more money at it and hope things get better. There's real change coming, and will he be the one who authors that change? I mean, you can think about this, like we're all arguing about the Secretary of State and this and that. Trump's going to run this, right? This is not going to be delegated. This is going to be managed. He manages things. That's how he got where he is. And so I don't worry about a lot of slippage there. And I think Carson is an important voice on, you don't have to, you may start in poverty, but you don't have to finish there, right?
Yep.
And I think that's the whole thing of housing policy is to get people out of it, right?
Right.
And that we kind of lost that focus. We sort of like, let's make it comfortable. Don't make it comfortable. We want people to be uncomfortable in that situation and want out.
Right. Instead of creating the cycle of dependence, which is what we tend to do. All right. Well, then just that brief mention of Secretary of State. Trump actually said this morning that it will happen very soon. So, and he reiterated that he and Mitt are on pretty good terms. So he's keeping that into the pot. And Trump has just been very cagey about this, very smart about how this all plays out. So if it winds up being Mitt, that's fine. I mean, I think we're kind of been we're just all getting used to the idea. We see all these names and say, okay, well, Mitt's acceptable out of this group.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we said before, he looks the part. I mean,
right.
He is, and you need an international businessman, because that's what the Secretary of State is going to be. Is going to carry that business message around the world.
Right. The other side of that coin is, what happened to Rudy?
Well,
I haven't seen Rudy for like a week.
We don't have a DHS guy either, right?
No.
So
there's still several
lining up for that, because I think Rudy's a little bit of a hot mess. I don't think he. I mean, he can do what he needs to do for us, right? But I don't think we want him being our representative all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, once again, you talk about blunt force. I mean, this is the blunt object kind of guy. There are certain places you need to be a little bit more diplomatic, and this
may not be his strong suit.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you're right about that. All right, vote recount. We talked about this in previous weeks. So it's actually happening in Wisconsin. What's that? $3.5 million they have to pony up. I mean, Jill Stein raised about $7 million, so this is not a problem. But what I saw was...
She's about to get some new living room furniture, too. I'm just throw that out there.
That after 6 days, the net effect of going through these votes in Wisconsin was that Hillary's gained 2 votes.
2 votes.
So then then the question is, why are we doing this? Except that Jill Stein says, well, it's all about voter integrity. Oh my gosh, shoot me.
Well, it's what it is about. And at some point, they found 10,000 votes for Trump, right? Somewhere in Wisconsin or somewhere. Some of these things they've looked at, I read somewhere they found 10,000 votes for him, and they're now opening up to look at Nevada again. If I'm Trump, I'm like, we don't redeal if I win, right? We keep it like it is.
Right.
We move forward, from there. But the question is, why are they doing this? And the answer, I think, is just to build up ways to say it's not legitimate and you don't have a mandate. But mandates they come from within. It doesn't matter what the vote total was in your election, whether you have a mandate. What matters is what you do when you get into office. Obama came in with a mandate and squandered it, right? He spent it on Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, and a stimulus we never saw. Okay, as soon as it's done, we get to springtime in Washington, all of that will be gone.
Right. Yeah, and I think you can determine what those mandates are. I mean, if you're going to say that if there is a mandate for Trump, you could do it by looking at the electoral map and seeing how much red there is. Because once again, and we've talked about this, the votes for Hillary, were coming from California, New York, these very heavily blue. You take those out of the equation, and the vote totals, change dramatically. But
the other thing about that is okay. In California, you had a Senate race with 2 Democrats, right? Jungle primary, that's who emerged. Okay, in Texas, you had no Senate race. You had nothing to vote for but president, and they were relatively sure Trump was going to win. So you had depressed turnout in Texas and heightened turnout in California, which Trump didn't waste $5 on because you're not going to win it anyway. So it really underscores that the rules of the election dictated this, and it's just a statistical anomaly that she can enjoy it, take whatever satisfaction she wants to take in it, but scoreboard says 302 for Trump.
Yeah, that's right. Well, 306, I think.
306.
306, I think, is the official count. Let's just talk about Al Gore very briefly, just because I know you're all over the whole climate change thing most of the time. The idea that Gore goes up there and he's talking with Ivanka, and it's like, we need to have you, be strong on this. From a guy who basically said, it's a Chinese hoax, right?
Yeah. He's going to listen to people that are going to make us squirm, right?
Yeah.
And he is going to, the danger with Trump is when he goes into these meetings, people tell him, and they, and these guys are all good at telling these stories, right? Or they wouldn't have been president or vice president or whatever. So like he went and talked to Obama, and then he comes, well, some of Obamacare we might need to save, and there's a few features of other things that I might not undo as quickly, and I got to think a little more. But then within 2 or 3 days, we are hacking Obamacare. We are following through on our promises, So he hears the story, he responds to it on an emotional level, then he thinks about it and it comes back, and with the decision that's the decision. And I think that's, he talked to Trump. He got what, he talked to Gore. He got whatever Gore's perspective is. Is there any news here? Is there anything we should have considered? We don't know. We didn't know before. And I think, it's not worth worrying about.
Right, and I think this kind of feeds into to a certain degree the whole Dakota Access Pipeline. So Obama has basically stopped it for now, But the whole Dakota Access Pipeline thing is really kind of, from what I'm reading, is really built on a lot of false premise from those that are protesting. The pipeline itself is on private land, which the government can't do anything about anyway. It's just the whole river crossing, I guess, that the Army Corps of Engineers has to give permission to, and that's what they've been denied. But Trump can go and fix that.
Right. It'll be the start date on that will be January 21st. Right. The Keystone Pipeline too. They've already given that indication that they're going to do that. There was a water intake that comes out of the Missouri River near where the pipeline would go below it. The pipeline's supposed to go 300 feet below the riverbed, and it's encased in these things that they've never used before. They're the super newest technology ways to ensure nothing ever leaks. So it'd have to leak through the newest technology of anti-leak, and then it would have to go up 300 feet, defy gravity for 300 feet to get into the river. Okay, so that's a football field, right?
Yeah.
So, they asked the tribal lands question, and no one popped up. Okay, so the whole thing is a mirage. The whole thing is created by the Soroses of the world to muck up energy exploration.
I will say this: I am enjoying the protesters as they're trying to leave, watching their car slide down a hill in the snow and run into each other. Yeah. So a little karma or something. I don't know what that is.
Sorry, but that is a little moment of joy.
Yeah. All right. One last thing before we go 2-minute warning. Your thoughts on Biden 2020?
There's no way he really does that. I think he got asked a question and he gave an answer. No one's excited about that. But it does point out one problem with the Democrats. It's like they don't really have anybody, right? Hillary's talking about it. You can't bring that back.
No, it's just
come on.
There's no bench. There are no ideas.
Right. They need a complete rethink, and they need to get rid of a lot of people in their coalition. Their coalition needs to get smaller before it can grow again.
Yeah, and I think the re-election of Nancy Pelosi with all that, with 63 votes against her, shows us that things have got to change if they want to get back into power.
That's right.
All right, 2-minute warning.
Okay, outrage in the state of Maryland. Starting tonight, the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association, Maryland Public Schools football championships will be played at Navy. There's 2 games tonight and 2 tomorrow night, I believe. The reason they're played this weekend is because Navy was in the conference championship game last week. They played in the stadium. The reason it's played at Navy is because the greenskeeper of the Ravens stadium said it was too much trouble to fix the turf after those 4 games. Fire the greenskeeper. Fire the head of the stadium authority unless he can find a greenskeeper who can handle that. The taxpayers paid for that stadium. These are their schools. This is their championship. Either figure out a way to get that done or fire everyone involved, Governor Hogan.
Okay, well that was something I was not quite expecting there to hear, was come back to Maryland. For me, it's just I think just a quick comment on what happened, the referendum in Italy. So Renzi had staked his reputation, his political career, at least for now. Italian politics is kind of crazy anyway.
They had 50 governments since World War II.
Yeah, right. So this is nothing new for them. So he's got a kind of a center-left government that he was running, and the voters rejected him by 60-40 or something like that. So
liberalism's losing all over the world. People are fed up.
Yeah. And so I mean, he was trying to take away power, and it didn't succeed, and so we'll see what happens there. But once again, more Europe in kind of a state of flux. But as you said, liberalism is kind of losing its grip in a lot of ways. So I think the future for Europe, if they can get through some of these things, could be very bright. We get rid of all those bad politicians.
That's right.
So all right, well, we're out of time, and thank you again for joining us for this week for the Bias Buzz, and we'll see you again next week.